Hello, my name is Lichwalla, and today I'm going to be talking about media and morality. I'm going to start off by asking you guys a question. How many ads do you think the average person sees in a given day?
25.
25?
100.
100?
53.
53?
75.
80.
Okay, so the number is 5,000, which is 10 times what it used to be back in 1970. And ads are absolutely everywhere, as seen by the number. They are from billboards, they're in movies, they're in our private and locked Instagram accounts, they're on college football and trophies, they're on park benches, and there's just absolutely no escaping them. They're absolutely everywhere we go. Of those ads in society, how many do you think are harmful to people? And how would you feel if all those ads were positive and made the world a better place? Would you agree that some of these companies have a moral and financial duty to protect society from the negative effects of their products? Advertisements are in a way like a mirror. They reflect society, but in an exaggerated way. Advertisements are a reflection because they showcase the perceptions of society in that moment in time. For example, back in the 1950s, ads for cleaning supplies only featured women and just kind of cleaning their houses and doing things like that. But as time changed and views on domestic roles evolved, we began to see men using products like laundry detergents, soaps, vacuums, things like that. We also began to see men in commercials for baby products, women in the workplace, same-sex marriage, things like that. But as advertisers began to evolve and represent society's norms, the ability of these ads to reach more and more people at a saturated level increased. Advertisements should be required to have a responsibility for the effects of their goods and products in society. So society brings out individuals who both want to serve the greater good, so organizations like the American Red Cross, the St. Jude's, but it also brings out the bad who only serve for themselves and are selfish, like companies that only look out for themselves and greed and power. Ads are not only used to sell products and services, but also to drive political agendas, promote public service campaigns, and a variety of other reasons. So the question that I'm going to challenge you and ask you is, when do companies have a moral obligation to protect the public and limit themselves? Clearly, society has spoken on the question of cigarette companies, for example, and they have held them responsible for people buying and consuming their products. So when do we draw the line in the sand? Is it only when the health of the consumers are concerned? Is it when political ramifications stifle those without the ability to use megaphone, the deep pocket advisors? At the very least, we can follow a path that has already been carved and kind of played out by the regulations of the cigarettes. So cigarettes, going back, they're super popular, especially in the 20th century, and at its peak, 45% of adults smoked. And the reason for this is that cigarette companies advertise their cigarettes to be cool and trendy, and they were seen in movies at the time. The typical kind of like rebel kid, popular kid, always was good looking, athletic, and always had a cigarette in his mouth. And these advertisements, as we've seen here, these two soldiers are tough looking dudes, kind of ready for anything. They kind of depicted as being like really tough and really brave. Cigarette companies also do that, and they put people really youthful, having fun while smoking in order to draw the attention and bring in revenue from the younger audience. And they do this out of their own greed. They're manipulating you into buying their products, even though they do know what the effects are. And it works really well. And in 1963, 353 billion cigarettes were smoked. However, as modern medicine became a thing, we began to realize what cigarettes actually do, the real effects, and the government stepped in to protect the people and because of all of its effects. And in 1998, the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement put a limit on how how cigarette companies could advertise. So they did things like, you can't use cartoon characters, you can't mislead the consumers about the harmful effects, you can't display any kind of outdoor advertisements, including billboards and transit ads. They're outside of where they're being made. And in this, however, the governments further on, more recently, want to protect the youth because, to be honest with you, like, kids aren't really going to Google why are cigarettes bad before smoking. They just don't know any better. So cigarette companies started force the actual cigarettes to pay for advertisements like The Truth and Tobacco-Free Kids that are played consistently on television. They're put up on hockey boards at like NHL arenas. They're put on billboards, all kinds of public places, so people know what the real effects of cigarettes are. And they work really, really well. And as a result, as opposed to, it used to be 45% of adults smoked back in its peak, now only 15.5% of adults smoke. And the only reason this works is because the government stepped in to protect the people. Because the cigarette companies are not going to voluntarily say, here are the downsides of our product. Similarly, advertisements with potential harm to society, such as alcohol, fast food, and gambling, should have some skin in the game. Society can thus be protected from the harmful effects of some companies that leave out while advertising, because they only say one side of the story. They're really, really biased, and they don't say the full truth. A really common example of this is alcohol. Typically, when we see like an alcohol ad, we see some young, fit, good-looking people having a good time, as seen in this Corona ad. These people are in paradise. They're young, they look good, and this looks like really enticing. What they're doing is they're manipulating you to think that, hey, if I drink and I'll look good, feel good, and what these companies should do, they should have a responsibility for showing some of the negative effects of alcohol. As seen again with cigarettes and anti-smoking ads, we see people who are addicted to cigarettes, and they show things like blackened lungs, and people who have electronic voice boxes and some effects that occur with like smoking and long-term smoking. And so what I'm proposing, is that alcohol companies should show like things like liver kidney failures, and they should show some of the stories of people who were alcoholics and some of the effects under alcohol. There are some companies or some nonprofit organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous who stand for a great cause, and they try to get people almost like addicted to alcohol. But the issue is they don't have a loud enough voice or is a deep enough pocket as the larger alcohol and beer companies do, so they kind of get drowned out. So for example, the Super Bowl, last year 103 million people tuned in the Super Bowl, 23% of which only watched for the ads. A 30-second ad with 103 million people watched costs $5 million. Nonprofit organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous don't have the funding to pay for these ads and can't keep up with beer companies who only show one side of the product. While people do have the free choice to choose to drink alcohol, there's a moral obligation to inform the people so they can make an informed decision on not to drink alcohol. So if the public is only showing one side of the product and to choose the downside of known risks, it is the advisor's moral responsibility to hold accountable for the results of the side that they choose not to portray its message to the public. One thing that kind of all advertisements have in common is that those that are the most dangerous to the consumer are almost always benefit off of risky decisions that are chosen by the consumers under the influence of their product. So as I said, I talked about alcohol, but another common one people don't really think about is Las Vegas. When we see ads going for Las Vegas, we see some young people having a drink, maybe rolling a dice and winning a bunch of money for the whole table, which seems great and gives you a really good incentive to come to Las Vegas. But in reality, they don't show the darker side of the story, which is the guy that goes to Las Vegas and just gambles his whole life savings away, or the guy who just develops a gambling problem. So the gambling companies know these risks and they choose not to show them, but because it's kind of hard to come to Las Vegas if you see people just at rock bottom. But this also comes with responsibility, and they should be looking out for the benefit of society. So the advertising medium has one direct advantage. The power of the forum is able to exponentially deliver the message. So it's basically like a big megaphone, and today the megaphone is amplified louder and louder by the volume of the ads that we're always overwhelmed with. This megaphone is only available to the rich and powerful. As I talked about in the Super Bowl ads, not everybody can just pay $5 million for an advertisement. But this being said, because they have such a big audience and they are able to only show one side of the argument, they can also show a positive argument and something that's good and healthy to society. And I think it is the moral duties for these companies, especially companies that thrive off of risky decisions to their consumers, to speak a truthful message about their products to protect society. However, I understand most of these companies I've seen, Las Vegas and beer companies, they're not going to voluntarily just explain all the downsides of their argument. So the government should step in, explain the negative products of their property, the negative effects of their product. There should be like a checks and balances system where the government or some kind of like enforcing agency to hold them